Boy, that's a pitiful looking box, isn't it? Looks like somebody sat on it on its way from China. And I love the Chinese labels. Just my name. Well, let's see what's in it. Actually, I know what's in it. Let's let you see what's in it. Good Lord. It was well packed, though. So that box looking bad didn't mean a darn thing, in my humble opinion, because I think it was bubble wrapped well enough. It's a Walksnail Avatar HD VTX version 2. I decided to put digital on the little 5-inch. And in the past few days, I've taken the Walksnail I had apart and removed this noisy video transmitter. Plus, this one has 32 gigabytes of memory in it. Now, let's see if it'll actually fit. Come out of there. There we go. Oh, no antenna. Well, that's a shame. Oh, well. Such be life. I'm sure I can use one of the ones from the other one. There it is. Black. And let's see here. Totally different. Absolutely different. Can't find the way in which they would line up, but they're about the same size. I think I figured it out. Looks like right here. Oops. Yeah, must be. I think right here's the... Oh, here it is. These two screws come out, and we put the antenna in there. And the MIPI cable up front doesn't have a plate over it, so maybe that's in here. Yeah. Yeah, you can see it right there. And the wires and stuff for it. So, this will be mounted back there. Yep. It seems to work out. And I've already put the camera up front, but to tell you the God's awful truth, I wanted a low light camera on this, so I broke down yesterday and ordered a new camera for the front of this that will be low light and 120 frames per second, etc. Except I don't think the hardware can do 120 frames, but we'll get into that later. So I guess I'll take this camera out when the camera arrives from Race Day Quads and just make this all a whole new pro system. I had just ordered the transmitter because this transmitter is known to be so noisy for GPS. I was just wanting to replace this and use this for spare. So now I think that other camera will get here tomorrow. The next day I'll put it in here and I'll just put this version 1 system back like it is. But that won't give me an antenna. So I'm still got some things to figure out here. This is SMA or RPSMA connector that goes down to connect to the transmitter, so I'll have to get a different antenna and stuff. It'll take a little bit of time to work that out. And I ordered a 20 centimeter cable from Defiance RC, and I do have another whole Walksnail Pro system coming that I'm going to try to put on the Chimera 7 with the 20 centimeter cable that I ordered. Don't know if that's going to be possible until I see it and try it. So I guess we will start looking at this and figure out what other parts I need. Let's look at mounting that on the little 5-inch. Right now, yikes, you can see, let me get a pointer here. You can see there's little holes in this top plate. 1, 2, 3, 4. They're like 1 millimeter holes, M1 screws, not M2. There's a bit of a problem with the new VTX, several problems with the new VTX. These are the 20 by 20 mountain holes. They're little built-in threaded places. But the holes here are actually 25 by 25 or whatever this outside dimension is. And it would fit perfectly there. Just like that. No big deal whatsoever. There's just one little problem with that. To get that to screw down there, you would have to go through these holes. Here, and here, those outside holes. Well, underneath, this is the little antenna adapter they send you to adapt it to SMA, I think. And you see there's a screw here and a screw here to hold that plate down, and there's a nut on the back. So you could mount this. I could make these holes a little bigger right here. I don't want to because it's going to make this whole place weaker. So that these M2 screws would go through that hole and make these screws a little longer. And then you see I could bolt this down back there with longer screws, put these nuts underneath this plate. Right under here, on the other side of this hole underneath. The problem with that, and let me discuss the last problem back here, I see this plate meant to hold the UFL connector on doesn't cover it completely, you see. I don't even think it covers half of it there. Just really not real thrilled with that. I'd rather it cover it completely. Or maybe I've got it on there wrong. I don't know. The problem with using these outside holes that also hold this plate on is in the front, you've got this plate to hold on the MIPI cable, and you need to use these, take these bolts out, make them longer to go through. The problem is how are you going to mount this? Let's say you mounted it like this. Well, then what's going to hold this plate against the VTX when underneath this area there's going to be a gap there? If this is against the this area is against the carbon fiber, whatever the height is, this right here is going to be a looseness, and this screw and this plate's just going to be bouncing up and down. And by the same token, if you mounted it this way, so you can screw this plate down well in the front and run longer screws through the holes underneath, then the plate that holds on the antenna is going to be the same way in the back. It's going to have this much distance right here, a gap, and it's going to be loose. I guess you could put a spacer underneath there or something, but that's just getting really, really complex. So I'm not too thrilled. If this on the 5-inch was 20 by 20 mounting holes, we'd be good to go, but it's not. So that's where I decided to use my safety wire pliers, and I think I'm going to put a piece of safety wire around this transmitter in this area, or maybe 2, to hold it on there. I could use a tie wrap, but those are plastic. And this thing gets hot, or at least the original one gets really, really hot. Wherever it is. Oh, well, yeah, there it is. This version of it gets hot, even on the lowest power possible. I'm afraid it'll just make that tie wrap soft. Even melt it. I don't know that it would melt it, but it just worries me. So that's where I was going to put a piece of safety wire across the top of this to hold it on that frame. That'll also ground it to carbon. I don't know that that's needed anymore with these. That's one way this was attempted to reduce the GPS noise, was to ground this outside case again on this version. But this one doesn't have the GPS noise as badly, I don't think. So that's a bit of a problem for me. Now, another problem with this new transmitter, not real thrilled it didn't come with an antenna, because there's a new antenna for the new transmitter. The old ones will work on it, but I don't know. See, I ordered this as a replacement for this, which it isn't. There's other problems with it too. For instance, in the case of this transmitter, video transmitter, the little connector on the side right here is where the wires are to go. This is just a little connector I was using on the Skyhunter. This is where the wires are to go to the flight controller. On the new one, you've got a little connector like this, like the small one on this side. Matter of fact, I think these are the same. Yep. On the new one, this connector is used right here to connect to the flight controller. Or you can solder up. Yeah, it's upside down. That's the new connector going to the flight controller, the little 4-pin, or you can solder to these pads. Now, the really funky thing about this is this connector comes with the new transmitter. But to connect to the USB to take things on and off of this, this is what came with the version 1 transmitter for that purpose. A USB with a little 4-pin on it, which goes right here and works well. Just be advised, you have to power it. This won't completely power it. You have to power it from the flight controller, and then you can use this right here to take video off of it. And with the new one, there'll be 32 gigabytes, so you're going to want to do that. The problem for me here is The new transmitter, okay, we established this 4-pin is for the flight controller. This connector on the other side is a 6-pin, but it's not the same type of connector as the original one. So this connector will not physically go into this. It's too tall. There's some other kind of connector that's got to go in, in this connector, so you can connect USB to a computer and take images and videos off of it. And this connector for this doesn't come as part of the transmitter kit. I think that stinks to high heaven, because I've looked all over the Walksnail site to try to figure out what kind of connector that is so I can wire up a USB to it. But I can't. So what I've got to do now, which I think stinks to high heaven, I've got to wait for that full kit of the Walksnail Pro to come in the door here, which I actually think it's going to come in this week. I know the camera for the front of this, the new version of the camera for low lights, coming Thursday, I think. The 20-centimeter cable to put one of these kits on the Camera is coming Wednesday, I believe. And then, like I said, the camera for this, I think, Thursday. I really do think one of those days the full Walksnail Pro kit will come in the door. That's when I'll be able to see the connector that goes in this side that should be in that kit. Better be in that kit. So, a little bit disappointing there that this kit right here, for me, had a few parts missing that should be in there. At least the connector to do the serial part. At least whatever connector there that is. And I haven't found out what kind of connector it is yet. So I'm not real thrilled with that fact. Because it sort of stops me dead in the water here. Also, this heatsink came with the little 5-inch. It had little some more on the metal on the sides here that stuck up. It's for a 03 unit, I think. These 4 screws exactly match those holes. The problem with this heatsink, which I wanted to use, is again, if you put it on this Walksnail, no matter where you screw it on, there's a big air gap between the heatsink and the Walksnail itself. So they should be touching. They actually should have thermal grease between them to make sure there's a good heat transfer. So I can't really use the heat sink that goes down in here so well. And if I could mount the Walksnail to the top of that, you can see the heat sink. Oops, maybe you can see the heat sink. Not easy to see it, is it? The heat sink really sticks down in that area. There you can see it. To be cooled. I really did want to use that, but if it doesn't have direct contact, that's probably not going to work. So right now, I'm stuck waiting on parts to come in the door for this connector that I have no idea what it is. But again, I think I'm going to put that in there. And I'm going to just basically safety wire it in there instead of using the tie wrap. I'm really kind of at a loss there. It looks okay. So things are moving along towards finishing the physical build of this thing, and we will start on the software. While I'm here, I'm just going to make a little mention of some of the things on this build. Try to keep that from getting broken. Wires torn loose. While we're waiting on parts. This frame was pretty easy to put together. One of the tricks to it is there's a bottom plate, 4 arms, and then a top plate. And you can't see it any longer because I covered it up with the ESC wires. But right here is a place where, is it right there? Let me look. Yep. Okay, yeah. Right here is one of the screws that holds this top plate right here on, and it's got threaded little nuts embedded into the carbon fiber. Knocked the daylights out of my camera. So this was fairly easy to put together because I used the screw, again, that went through the carbon fiber, this one right here, and locked into the top plate. I just put one screw in, put one arm on, put another screw here, put this arm on, did that for all 4 of the arms, and then I came back doing these screws that this screw right here locks into this standoff right here. These 4 screws that also hold the arm are also the stack screws. So the tops of them are right here. Now then, I could have put the carbon, not carbon fiber, fiber optic cables in the arms. I did not, because I wasn't going to use the LED on this. So I didn't even put the little board in the center of this, which is this little board. And this has 5 LEDs on it. 1 in the center for straight down, and then 4 for each arm that would go in the center of those 4 arms, something like that inside the frame. I guess I could have hooked up the LEDs on this controller. I wasn't really that much into it because before I put it together, I thought I had my side plates where they would work. And the side plate over here will go on. The problem is this connector right here. Again, I got my ESC wires soldered on this time, close in and lowered down so that they didn't keep the sides plates from going on. But this connector right here on the controller, H743 Mini, keeps the side plates from going on. So if I can't use the LEDs in the side plates, then I wasn't real interested in using them anywhere else. This is the junction box for all. This connector back here goes to the little LED board that's in the middle of the legs. These 2 allow it to connect to the side plates, and this one goes up to the flight controller. It has a buzzer on the bottom. This goes in a little plastic piece and goes right in the front right here. Well, I decided not to put that in either because I wasn't going to be using the LEDs, and if I want a buzzer, I'll put a different buzzer in there. Mostly I wanted to put my Crossfire RC transmitter up there, which is what I did, and I put the antenna on the front rather than the back, where, you know, I've been worried about electrical noise on this, just in all sorts of shapes, forms, and fashions. So that's what I decided to do. On the GPS wires, it's so easy to put a little foil on those wires for kicks and grins and shield them and ground the shield. It took me like 3 minutes. I don't think it does that much. As one viewer said, noise is induced into the GPS itself and the antenna on the GPS more so than the wiring going to the GPS. But this is just so easy and quick. And I would say it cuts down some of the noise induced into the wires, which was probably 1/100th or so of the total noise getting in. So you can do that if you want, or if you like, you can just leave it off. I don't think it's going to make a whole lot of difference one way or another on that. But this GPS from iFlight evidently has some noise immunity to it, because on the bench and on outside when I flew it, that little sucker hooked up a bunch of satellites real easily and real quickly. So I do like that. We'll be looking at that more. So there wasn't much to show in this frame build. There's really nothing to this frame. And seeing I had built the Chimera, I knew how to do the camera real quickly on this one. It was all just really simple on this one. There's just 2 screws, holds this front camera mount on, with a standoff right here in the front, which I use to tie wrap my antenna to. That's all there is to that. In the back, there's 2 little metal spacers that holds these 2 plates apart with standoffs. This top plate, you can tell when it's positioned correctly, not only the little nuts on top for binding this together, well, these standoffs are cut out in that top plate, so these don't turn when you're trying to tighten them down, which is good. There just really was very little to do with this. Now, I did think about putting this ESC in backwards and doing a different thing with these wires to have them up front here. Boy, this camera work today is terrible. But I changed my mind on that, because there's a big capacitor right here soldered to that ESC. And there's a hole. You can see right there, that capacitor's down in there too. Maybe I can see it, but you can't. Now you can. So you can see that capacitor goes down below that top plate. So I mounted it the way they wanted to, with that capacitor down in the hole that's provided in there. Shorted up 12 wires. That was finished. I couldn't use the cable that came with the ESC to do this connector. It wasn't long enough to go from the front of the ESC to here. I had to use one that I had from another source. So there wasn't much to show on this build. It's just really super simple, and then soldered the wires down on top. So what I've got left to do is this MIPI cable is going to come over the top, go down through there and into the Walksnail when it's mounted in here, and the antenna is going to come out here, and then the little top plate goes on. There's not much to this creature at all. Top plate will go on like that. And of course the little TPU mount goes in the front here to hold the 4K camera in the front. So everything's going pretty well on the little 5-inch, except for the darn connector here, which I've got to wait on that full size. And you know, when the full size transmitter and stuff comes in, I'll have one of those cables, and it can be used on 100 of these video transmitters, which is fine if you've got one. If you have none, it's kind of a little problem. So I'm kind of prevented from going much further yet till some more parts come through the door. So the last thing I'll say, because this has gotten too long, is I am going to use this that comes with the little 5-inch and has a, I think, an SMA connector up here. Yep. And could somebody make some antenna recommendations for me? Because I do have this antenna that does go on there. Well, yep, there we go. But it's just a little pagoda antenna. If you could recommend a better single antenna for the back of this little creature, I'd be beholden to you. Another little thing on the safety wiring of this thing in. This transmitter, this is the back, this is the front. And you can see the little heat sink goes in this direction, and that's, I was going to kind of use this to go, that safety wire to go in to hold it front to back. But on the new transmitter, they've got their heat sink going 90 degrees. So if I put a piece of safety wire across this, it'll feel flat to the safety wire, and it'll move all around. So I still don't have my solution for that completely. But I did think it was funny yesterday when I wanted to use these, and I did just throw out a little video to see who knew what they were. They're safety wire pliers from my military days. And I just thought it would be a quick, dirty way to tie wrap that down there, especially if the heat sink was this way, where the wire would go in one of them slots and go around it. But again, this is the rear of the original one. Again, they have changed the way the veins in the heat sink go by 90 degrees, so that might not be the best. I'm probably going to end up putting standoffs on this tall enough to make sure that these plates on both sides, one side will be held down by the tops of the screws, but the other side will have to be, because they're on opposite sides of it, the other side will have to be held against the bottom with some kind of standoffs. But I'll figure that out later. All right, guys, that's all for today. Thank you so much.